Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in September. I didn't read that much, but I still wanted to come on and tell you guys what I did read and talk about it all, so let's just get into it. So the first book that I read this month was Misconduct by Penelope Douglas, and I gave this book 4.5 stars, I believe. Let me double check. Yes, so I gave this one 4.5 stars. I loved this book. I say this every time I talk about a Penelope Douglas book, but if you don't know, I'm obsessed with Penelope Douglas. I know a lot of people don't like their writing and a lot of people love them. Okay, if the angle kind of changed a little bit, I'm sorry, my SD card got full so I had to delete stuff. What was I talking about? I was talking about how much I loved this book. Let me scooch back a little bit. On the blurb, it literally starts by saying, for fans of Colleen Hoover, blah blah blah. That is a perfect way to describe this. There was so many plot twists. It was so hooking from beginning to end. Literally incredible. If you like Colleen Hoover books, even if you hate Penelope Douglas normally, I really think you should give this one a shot. It's really good. But basically this book is about Easton Bradbury, who used to be a professional tennis player, but she had to stop playing tennis for reasons that you come to find out throughout the book. And basically her and her older brother live in New Orleans, which is my favorite city in the entire world, and she is a teacher. I think she's 23, so this does have an age gap, but she's 23 and I think he's maybe 30, or like he's somewhere around 30 I believe, and she's 23, so it does have an age gap. And basically it starts off and she meets this man at a masquerade party. So she doesn't know who he is really, and he doesn't know who she is, he just knows her name. So they meet at this party and then they go their separate ways at the end of the night, whatever. And then they go their separate ways for a few months and they happen to run into each other again because Easton is the guy's son's new teacher. And the guy, Tyler, I don't know why I didn't say his name, Tyler, he is actually running for, I don't think it's mayor, but it's like some sort of political thing. But he's running for that, so obviously he has to stay out of drama and everything, and also there's a lot that happens and goes on between him and his son and the whole storyline there. There's so many plot twists as well, and Easton's story is so fascinating and so is Tyler's. I loved every character in this book. Also, Tyler's son, I love him. I want a whole book about his high school years. Penelope, give it to me. But I love this book. Honestly, I kind of want to up my rating to 5 stars because this was incredible. This was so good, and please, if you get one thing out of this video, it is to go read this book right now. Even if you've tried Penelope's writing and you don't like it, just please, this is incredible. I loved it so much. The next book I read this month was Little Lies by Helena Hunting. I read this one on my Kindle. This one is basically, it's a hockey romance, a college hockey romance, childhood friends to enemies, well yeah, childhood friends to enemies to lovers, second chance romance kind of. So this book is about Lavender and Kodiak, and they grew up together. Kodiak is one of Lavender's older brother's best friends, so they grew up spending a lot of time together. He's 1 or 2 years older than her, and basically when she's really young, she has this quite traumatic thing happen to her, and Kodiak ends up helping to save her, but they both suffer from a lot of anxiety, and that's a huge part of the book, and I think it was shown really well, the anxiety. They both have quite differing types of anxiety, if that makes sense. Like, it shows itself in very different ways to each of them. They went their separate ways, and then Lavender ends up moving in with her brothers at college, and Kodiak lives just down the street. He's still best friends with her older brother, so she ends up running into him a lot, and it starts off, they clearly don't like each other. There's clearly been a lot that's happened since that time when they were kids, and so they really don't like each other, but they end up kind of getting forced to spend time with each other and be like kind of forced proximity in a way, because she lives with her brother and he's like her brother's best friend. He's a really big hockey player. I will say I found it a little bit cringy, and I hate that. I can't even remember why. There was just some things that I was like, And I have heard people say that about Helena Hunting's other books. So if you do get like cringed out, is that a word? Like if you find things cringy and that's a big deal breaker for you, I'm gonna honestly not recommend this, because I found it cringy and it takes a lot for me to be like, oh, this is really cringy. But there were also some really good quotes and I loved their relationship. But yes, that was Little Lies by Helena Hunting, and I don't know if I said this, I gave that one 3.5 stars. Next book, it wouldn't be a Jamie Hogenbirk reading wrap up if I didn't mention a Zodiac Academy book. This book, she is thick. I think this is the thickest book I've ever read. This could even be thicker than the Mindfuck series as a whole. And that's a whole series. It's like 700 pages. How did I read this? Oh my gosh. Like always, I find it so difficult to explain the plot of this book in particular, because obviously if I explain the plot of this book, then I'm going to be spoiling the previous books in the series. But let me tell you, I loved this book. If you have read this series, please DM me on Instagram, because the only ones of my friends who have read it are only up to book 3. So I'm ahead of them and I don't have anyone to talk to or rant to about this series. So if you have read this and you've read the whole series, please DM me and let me know, because I need someone to talk to about this series. I'm obsessed. I love it so much. I gave this book 5 stars because it was so good. There was so much I loved about this book, and then the end, so heartbreaking for so many reasons. Like not even just one heartbreaking thing, like heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. Like you don't get a break, and apparently it's like that for the rest of the series, so I'm really not excited to carry on with it, but I still love it and I will always love it. I just highly recommend this series. I know a lot of people don't like it, but personally I'm a big fan and I love it, so I would recommend this series. Please read it. Okay, so remember at the start of the video when I said it was a really good reading month and I read a lot of good books? This next one was a 2-star, and in theory I would give it like a 1 star, but it's just a novella, so I feel like it's unfair to give a novella 1 star, because it is what it is. It's spicy, it's short, there's no plot. Like you get what you're after. So I can't rate it too harshly because of that, but this is Thicker Than Blood by Amelia Crawford. So this one I don't even remember what it's about, but if you're looking for something really short and spicy, go read the blurb. It might be for you, it might not. It's super dark. Super dark, there's your warning. But that's obviously no judgment if you do love this book. That's completely fine. It just wasn't for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of you would love this. So feel free to check it out. Personally, it just wasn't for me. That's completely fine. Next up, another incredible read, and this is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I don't know, hopefully that's right. You've probably seen this book, you've probably heard of it. It was even better than I imagined. I have wanted to read this one for ages and I've been putting it off because I was like, I don't know if I'll get into literary fiction. It might be slow, I don't know if it's going to be for me. It was for me. It was literally for me. I really want to read, what's it called, Eileen by her, because so good. The way that she writes, the way that she depicts the main character's emotions and feelings and struggles and desires and everything was just so incredibly done. I will say the first chapter, which is 50 pages, I read the first chapter, I finished it and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this one. But after I read that second chapter, I was obsessed and I was so hooked. The side characters in this, the friend, I literally forget her name. Reva? Is that? Yes, Reva. I loved it and I loved the development of the story. But if you don't know what this is about, it's basically about a girl who is in her 20s. I think she's like 23 or something. She's basically perfect. She's like the ideal, she is that girl in New York City. And it's basically her journeys. She finds this psychiatrist who is not good and she embarks on this mission to sleep for a whole year, and she barely leaves her apartment. It's hard to explain this book because there's so much that happens, but also nothing happens because she just sleeps for a year, but so much happens. I think this was just really well done. The way Otessa writes things was so incredible. I don't know, I really enjoyed this and I highly recommend it. Next up, I read Confess by Colleen Hoover. I did read the physical copy of this and I read it while I was camping, but I've lost it. I think it's like in my mum and dad's car or something. I'm really not sure. But I loved this book. This is my second Colleen Hoover book ever. My first one was Heartbones and I gave that one 5 stars, and Confess got 5 stars straight away. It was so incredible. I know it's not one of Colleen's most popular, so if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It was so good. Basically, it starts off with this girl. I kind of forgot her name. Oh, I'm the worst. Auburn. Her name is Auburn. It starts off with this girl, Auburn, and very first chapter, she's 15 and she's basically saying goodbye for the last time to her boyfriend who is about to pass away. So that's how the story starts. And I was like, basically, whatever. She moves to a new town and there's clearly a lot happening in her life. You don't find out about it at all, obviously, until the end in classic Colleen fashion. There's a lot of plot twists, and this book had so many plot twists. There was like 5 plot twists. It was incredible. But she ends up needing another job and she walks past this building and it's got like a help wanted sign out the front. So she's like, what is this place? The owner ends up coming out and he's like, hey, can you help me? And she's like, sure. So she goes and she works for this guy Owen for the night. Turns out he is an artist and he basically draws or paints people's confessions. So people anonymously leave confessions in this little slot at his shop, and then he goes through and he paints them and sells them. And it's really, really cool. There's the paintings in the book, like pictures of the paintings in the book. All the confessions are in the book. It's so cool. And then as the book goes on, obviously they kind of develop a bit of a relationship, but she's still a bit closed off. There's this whole other thing going on in her life which is insane and so heartbreaking and incredible. And then he has this whole stuff going on with his family and then just his past and like their past. It was so good and there was so many plot twists and so much going on. Well, seriously, I think this is, I don't even have words for how much I loved this book. You just have to read it for yourself to understand how good it was. My final book for this month was Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This book I really haven't heard many people talk about. I think I've seen one post on bookstagram about it, but I pre-ordered this like months ago before it came out because it came up on my Amazon and I was like, you know what, I do think I'll like that. So I pre-ordered it and oh my gosh, did I love it. I think I gave this one 4.5 stars. Basically, it's about this girl Phoebe who is obsessed with serial killers, and because of that she obviously doesn't trust people. She's very wary and very like on edge around strangers, and she ends up having to move back to her childhood town because her dad passed away really suddenly, so she needs to go help her brother by moving into the dad's house to clear it all out and everything. And she ends up meeting this random guy and she is so untrusting of him at first, and then it turns out he is her neighbor, and she basically is adamant that this man is a serial killer. Honestly, look, I don't even know. I feel like this has been classified as romance as the genre, but in my opinion it wasn't romance at all. It was definitely more literary fiction because it was so just, it was really just about Phoebe and like her being back where she grew up, seeing these people from her past and hanging out with her brother and then meeting this guy and trying to figure out if she can fall in love and all of these things. It was really just about Phoebe and her figuring out things, honestly. So I don't know if this is romance, but I'm not gonna promote it as a romance book because yes, there is a lot of romance in it, and the main storyline, besides it just being about Phoebe's life, is about her and this neighbor Sam. But I really think it was so much more than just romance, and I found it so fascinating. I really enjoyed this and I highly recommend checking it out and adding it to your TBR. I think it was a really, really well done book. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read in September. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said at the start, I didn't read too many books this month, unfortunately. Hopefully I read a few more in October, but we'll see. I said that in August as well, so who knows. But if you want to keep up with the books I'm reading and that sort of stuff. Make sure to follow my bookstagram, which is at jamies.books, and also my Goodreads, which I think is just Jamie Hogenbirk. I'll have it linked in my link tree. And if you just want to keep up with my life and my personal stuff, just follow my normal Instagram, which is just at Jamie Hogenbirk. I also post a bit about books on there, so. But thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!